Alors, bonjour à tous et à toutes, et je vous souhaite une chaleureuse bienvenue à Montréal ici pour joindre nous. Nous sommes très contents d'être ici. And that will be enough of my French for this morning. Excellent. Okay, I'm very pleased to be here to represent Payments Canada and following on my colleague Tracy. And we are delighted to be joined by Louis-Étienne and Dominique to have a good discussion today about ISO 20022 or data-rich payments. You just heard Tracy speak at quite a bit of length about our very ambitious modernization program that is well underway and well on the path. And she did also speak quite a bit about the benefits and what we're seeing with respect to payments and how businesses can benefit from a data-rich standard. And, you know, your question, ma'am, over here with respect to global interoperability is a really big, important one. And we feel very strongly, of course, that the network effect you get as you increase adoption of this new standard, which will be global, will really facilitate better business for everyone. And I think that's what it's all about, smoother transactions. And for me, who's a CFO who comes from a very cash-heavy, payments-heavy organization, I think about it very simply. The ISO 20022 standard will offer the ability for your back office in your busy businesses to be vastly more efficient, much more improved, get rid of paper pretty much entirely. But on the other hand, for business as a whole, you're going to have a much richer experience for both your supplier base as well as your customers, as you'll be able to send them all kinds of data that travels with that payment, and that will make for a stickier relationship on both sides of the procure to pay and the sales cycle, which is wonderful. And so without further ado, let's get more into some questions that we have for our esteemed panel. So I think Ryan mentioned earlier, Louis-Étienne is from Raymond, Chabot, Grant Thornton. I'll get that one right for you. I'll give you notes on that one later. And Dominique Samson from Flinks. So let's start with you, Louis-Étienne. What's your perspective on the opportunity based on your experiences for data-rich payments in Treasury and corporates?
Yep. So we can segregate the opportunity from, well, in two buckets. Short-term opportunity, there's opportunity right now to move to richer data, and there's opportunity once the modernization will be completed in a few years from now. If I start with the long-term one, having one standard or one file format traveling in the payment chain from the beginning to the end, that's where the opportunity resides. In the sense that today, if you're doing an electronic payment, it's like I'm sending an email to my bank asking them to pay. They call the beneficiary bank, and then the beneficiary receive a fax. So data, they get lost, they get truncated. It's very difficult to have visibility on those payments. So I really think the long-term benefit or opportunity with the modernization is having all that data traveling with the payment. So better visibility, one standard, so when I'm going to integrate myself or automate some processes, no matter which bank I'm doing business with, Canada or outside Canada, it's going to be the same standard, so a lot easier, faster to implement and to create that automation. And then I think the biggest opportunity is really having that remittance information traveling with the payment on the receiving end. You know, I will know exactly who paid me, what they paid me for, et cetera, so you can automate the reconciliation, the cash reconciliation, and that to me is really the biggest opportunity. And of course, after that, the banks, you know, can come up with other banks or fintech, other added value services, since the data will be traveling with the payment. So more analytic on it, so on and so forth. So that's the long term, or further ahead opportunities. But I do encourage all our customers to move right now on ISO 20022, because most of the banks today in Canada or outside Canada, they do support ISO 20022 today.
Perfect.
So you can integrate, you can send a payment file in an ISO 20022 format. So the benefit, it's not as much, it doesn't go at the end, but you still have some benefit from a standard point of view. So it's a lot easier to integrate with your banks. You can use the same format for any type of payments. So it could be wires, it could be ACH, EFTs, so on and so forth. So you don't have to, develop different format to support. It is standardized, and you do get better visibility. So with ISO, there's a set of rules also that comes, not only the format, but there's a set of rules where you will be receiving what they call payment status report. So you will know exactly, my account was debited, did they send the payment forward in the payment chain, so on and so forth. So you do get short-term opportunities if you move forward with ISO 20022. And also all the vendors out there, there's a few in the room. There's also vendors outside Canada. ISO 20022 is already built in. If you look at ERP system, TMS system, you have other type of vendors. They are well aware of ISO. It's already built in, so it's a lot faster to do integration. It's over the days where you want to connect to a particular bank, they send you their proprietary format. You have a bunch of developers testing over and over again. That's, to me, it's behind us. You can integrate and automate your payment a lot faster today.
Okay, well, thank you, Louis-Étienne. And Dominique, so just building on Louis-Étienne's answer, there's a lot of benefit to going now, and then we'll see more in the future, of course. But with all of that data available to the messaging standard, so many more characters and so much more embedded data, what more, from the fintech side of things, have we in the room generally not even thought of yet that you guys are exploring? What do you see for us?
Right, a lot of things. Well, first off, good morning, everyone. Thanks to the people joining us remote. And maybe before I get into these data-enabled use cases for payments, I'll tell a little bit about Flinks so that everyone understands the perspective we bring. So we're a financial data company that allows to connect consumers' bank accounts, whether it's individuals or businesses, to financial service providers. So we serve hundreds of clients from across the financial industry, and a lot of them being payment processors. So we're not a payments company, but we do power payments companies. And how? By giving them access to this data. So now, how do payment processors use this data? What we see today is three main use cases. So one is simply for the purpose of account verification. So we're automating the manual labor of inputting the account number, the transit number, financial institution number. All that stuff is automated, and it's now error-free because it comes directly from the linked bank account. So that's one. Another one is balance verification. Because settlement doesn't happen real time, the benefit of this is making sure that there's enough money in the account that is being debited to avoid a settlement that doesn't balance out. And then you have to run after the money, the client, the payee gets stung by an NSF fee, whatnot. So doing this verification at the beginning of funnel. Another thing we enable is fraud detection. So, and I will spare you all the technical prowess behind this, but we can run analytics which can flag fraudulent account by looking at things like the age of the account, the level of activity, and whatnot. So we're able to spot beforehand, before the payment's done, and the person disappears with the money. There's also some funkier use cases that are not yet super popular in Canada, but we're starting to see elsewhere. And it's payment processors that are effectively using their proximity to the payees and their access to more data to effectively become themselves more lenders and underwriters. So a payment company that processes payments for an SMB might notice, for instance, hey, you do your payroll payouts twice a month. The second time, you're a little bit tight on money, so we could offer you this credit line to make sure you don't run out and that you don't have all of these problems. So using this proximity to insert themselves as a lender with their clients. So this is not directly payments. It's sort of one step removed, but still, it's a natural extension of it. And we do see payment processors that are getting into this next step. So bringing all of this back into perspective, these are all use cases of data in payments that are beginning of funnel. Like today, you can do all these things automated. And once we have an open banking system in Canada, it's going to be even more seamless and easy and secure to do. So this, coupled with ISO 20022, which will allow sort in a way the same thing, but for data traveling along with payments, is really promising for optimization of all the business processes of payment processors.
I think it will open up a bunch of opportunities that smart guys like Flinks will discover later on. There's some opportunity right now with the ISO. It may seem simple, but since you're sending everything through enriched data, then the banks are offering remit emails, for example. That's something that didn't exist before, or it was more difficult. Now all the information is there. The bank offered to their customer, do you want me to send an email to the beneficiary so they know exactly what you're paying? So this opportunity will disappear once we're modernized, but it will come along, and I think, thanks to fintech and these type of guys who are very smart and imaginative, will bring a lot of opportunities on the market with data-rich payments.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the opportunities a little bit, let's go to the dark side just for a moment. What are the biggest challenges today to start leveraging the opportunity, and how can Flinks, Raymond, Chabot, or others, how can we help each other in the ecosystem, make it easier to overcome these challenges? So let's start with you, Dominique. What do you see as the challenges right now, or what are your customers facing that you're trying to help out with?
Right. So taking the word leveraging as a keyword in the sentence, I would say the challenge is really about the timing. Because if you don't leverage these new use cases in a timely fashion, you're not leveraging them, you're just conforming to them. So being in the imperfect environment in which we are today, meaning we don't have an open banking system, we have still imperfect technology for as much for payment processing as for financial data aggregation. We have to navigate this imperfect environment with the tools we have at our disposition to make use of these new use cases. And some people are doing it right now, and they're seizing significant pieces of the market. Companies like TransferWise, for instance, international payments, they're taking a significant part of this. Again, navigating this imperfect environment. So to me, that's the challenge today in order to leverage this, is to navigate this imperfect environment to make sure you are top of wave and not just following the trend.
I work mostly with corporate and small, medium businesses, less with retail. So the challenges that they are facing today is, switching to ISO 20022 or integrate with the bank. It's basically an IT project, and all IT team on any customer I'm meeting with, they are stretched. Their priority or somewhere else, so on and so forth. So really, the challenges here, or how we help them to bring that to another level and bring awareness, is really build your business case. There's some quick gain and further gain. So assemble all this in one very tight business case. The goal is to eliminate checks. Right, so checks are very expensive. There's a study from Payments Canada. They estimate a real cost of a check is $15 per check. I think you were conservative on the number. Some of my customers saying it's a lot more.
Yeah.
When you calculate, everything, meditation, the buying the check, the bank fees, the post and so on. So it is very expensive. You also mentioned that wire is quite expensive too. So you need to build that business case around that. automation, efficiency, so on and so forth. And that's how you're going to bring this project, this IT project, more prioritized inside your organization. So I think that's the biggest challenges that we see from our customers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so as a final question for the panel before we move to audience questions, we've talked about the benefits and the challenges. What are some pragmatic steps? So as you're saying, Louis-Étienne, you've got to make the business case. What are the first steps that you recommend for your clients to start to measure, to figure out how to make that case so that, you know, the IT teams who are everywhere, you're absolutely right, ours included, totally screaming, they can't help out with the lowly CFO's back office pet project or a new ERP. They're modernizing the Canadian payment system. Sorry, too busy for you. I think that, okay, I didn't need that pen. I think that's something that we all see in the corporate world. We're dealing with customer experience, we're dealing with digitization, we're dealing with legacy systems, and so the IT teams just don't have the time and capacity. So how do our people here, how do these organizations start down the path to create a really compelling business case?
Well, my recommendation would be it's not a silo project. It's not only the treasurers or the CFOs. Bring all the stakeholders together. The banks are included into that. You know, what the banks can offer you more added value services, working with fintech, for example, they may have some benefit there. Work with your account payables, receivable, taxes. So bring everybody on board very soon to gather all the requirements and the opportunities. Then try to tag along on other projects. Like you mentioned, ERP upgrades, TMS implementation. You know, you can tag along those projects and really influence the roadmap. Like I mentioned, most of those technology, they already have some capability or ISO 20022 capability. So tag along and impose your vision, because it is the future. You have no choice to move to ISO 20022 in 5-6 years from now. So impose your vision, and also, you know, work with, you know, people that already did it before. Don't try to develop it your own and figure out how it works. Work with people who did it before to expedite and bring some augment your success level by using you know, either an external firm or people who experience in implementing or automating the payment workflows.
Perfect. Dominique?
And yeah, and maybe I would add to this. So the business case, having a business case for this transformation is absolutely true. And we work in a space where our technology is fundamentally disruptive of the business processes. When a client implements it, it transforms their business flow, literally. And almost every single client we have, they need to get this business case through before they adopt us as a supplier. And what we very often we sort of accompany them through this, because this is, to us, this is almost part of our sales process, right? And what we found that is very efficient to make the business case go through is support it with data. So, you know, we call ourselves innovators, but you're rarely the first person on the planet who has done it. There's probably some other geographies in which there's real-time payments and the equivalent of data-rich payments that is happening. So, you know, getting these people to share their insights about this aspect of my flow is X% more effective, my conversion rate is better, I need 50% less analyst work, all that sort of things is the data required to have a business case. So yeah, get the data from other people would be my advice.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Well, thank you both for supplying your expertise with us today. Just to add on for everybody who is looking to start down this path of ISO, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of a new nonprofit that started up earlier this year. It's called 20022 Labs, and the idea, it was founded in Canada, but it is global in nature, and the idea is to accelerate adoption and help out with these kind of business cases more broadly, both with institutions, vendors, suppliers, and the goal is to bring together all of the different pieces of the ecosystem in the network, so including corporations, vendors, investors, and fintech companies to help with the adoption. And so they are going to be offering case studies. They're going to be offering educational resources to help with the data and the business case. And they also will offer consulting and strategic services. One of them that has come out recently is the Dataful Sandbox. It's an interesting name. And it's a number of payment environments for you to go and pilot, essentially, or test things out in a more safe, secure environment without really impacting on your own resources very much or very little. So I'd encourage you all to check out 20022 Labs. And now we will move on to your questions. I look forward to hearing from you. So you have, again, a number of options at your disposal to ask questions. There's the good old-fashioned way. There is the Slido option. And for those on the webinar, of course, you have both the chat option as well as Slido. And if somebody asks a question that you like, please like it. And that just brings it up in the list as prominence. Yes, please, Julia, there's one in the front. Oh, we're just going to have Julia run, Julia, run.
Sorry. It's okay, I can yell.
Come on down.
There we go. Thanks, Julia.
A quick question. I hear a lot about modernization of the payment system, which I think is a good direction to go. What is your experience and what have you seen in terms of safeguarding that data? Because we're talking about a lot of data out there, so as we work through it, I think even as a consumer, I would be very cautious and very well aware that every time I go online, I'm shopping for something, my credit card information is out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent question. So just for those on the line, in case you couldn't hear, the question was with respect to the safety and security of data now that we're looking at modernizing and making it more open or more accessible or having just more data floating around. I think we can get two very good different perspectives here. Dominique, I'll start with you with what you're seeing on the fintech side, and then we'll move to Louis-Étienne with how you're consulting about it.
Right. So it's sort of an arms race, right? The more tech you have, the more data usage you have, the more all of this, the more prone you are to being a target of attacks. And this is curbed by in two ways mostly. One is the technical safeguards are increasing, so we have better and better cryptography, firewalls, all that stuff to protect from attacks. And the other aspect is governance. So if you take for instance online shopping, when it was still a new thing, everyone was afraid of what happens if a fraudulent transaction goes in, like, is someone going to empty my bank accounts? But what happens today is we have good governance in place to provide refund to the people who get defrauded, etc. So it's both these things, right? Right now, open banking is still in discussions in Canada, but these discussions about where will the liability fall are happening. So it's both. It's like the technical safeguards and the governance of where does liability fall.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially on the open banking, waiting to see what will be the regulation around it. That will be interesting. From a payment perspective, however, I'm less worried, meaning that it's already a secure environment where you're sending your payment to, and how this whole ecosystem is secured. So I don't foresee any major changes, except with new technology, API, stuff like that. But it's still very secure in terms of how the payment is sent over the third party, either through a SWIFT network, either FTP, so on and so forth. So I'm less worried. Where I'm worried is the faster my payments are settled, more on the risk or a fraud perspective. So how can I control those? If it's a real-time payment in a few seconds or minutes or hours, the money is gone. So I think it's really we need to come up with solution prior to kick off those payments. Like you said, is it a true account? did the KYC was done, or do I have some validation before kicking off the payment? Somebody changed the account. Is it the first time I'm paying this person, so on and so forth? So I think that's where, and it's a little bit outside of Payments Canada, but I think that's where we need to be smart and really prevent those payments to go on a real-time payment and the money disappear in a few minutes. So there's a lot of tool out there. There's a lot of fintech as well that are coming with solution to prevent and reduce the fraud.
Mm-hmm. And I would say from a Payments Canada or an ecosystem perspective, there has been a lot of work done in the last couple of years in particular to boost the cyber protection, if you will, of the data and the systems. And in fact, in a change that didn't exist before, the financial institutions and Payments Canada meet together to talk about risk and common risk elements quite regularly and frequently. So it's an excellent question that's certainly very top of mind for all of us and all of you in our ecosystem. Thank you for that. Michel.
You were talking about data-rich payment, and from a payment issuer, there's no problem because the data comes from its own system and it travels with the payment with the banks. But at the other end, the receiver of the payment, how do you perceive their capacity to adapt to to be able to have the capacity to read information automatically and to process that data in the proper way? Mm-hmm. What is your perception of that?
Louis-Étienne, or
I can
duke it out?
So right now, the data, when I'm receiving funds, I do get my statements either automatically or download it to the bank portal, and I have really few character or really minimal information in there. However, I did receive an email from the sender or whatever, so I do have some remit information somewhere, and that's where the complexity is. I have to match both, and then yes, it was received. So I think once we receive everything through the payment, and we see there's other type of ISO 20022 format like the CAMP format, and all the information will be in there and already centralized in one point. Then yes, of course, you have to come up with technology that can read it if you want to automate it, but at least even on a manual perspective, you will have all the data at one place, which will accelerate the reconciliation process. Does that answer your question? No?
Yes, it answers partly because every single receiver of the payment have its own system. So they're not prepared. I mean, in terms of depending on the format of the data that is traveling with the payment, you might have a problem to decode that data, and in order to make all the registration and all the process all the information.
Which is a good thing.
So this is a challenge. This is what I mean.
It's a good thing for us.
Yeah.
And about that, yeah, for sure there's going to have to have some adaptation that will take place. But I can make a parallel with what we do right now. So even if it's data that we collect in a bank account and that we ship to a business customer, it's not the same thing as traveling, but still, our business customer on the receiving end has to receive that data and make sense of it. So sort of the same issue. And this is very different throughout a range of different customers. Some are more sophisticated, IT speaking, and they will have a direct API integration with us. And the curated insights will be ingested automatically in their business flow. For example, a lender that wants to look at transaction data to underwrite a loan, some of the bigger or more tech-savvy companies will have this integrated in their decision engine. Others that are smaller or just not as tech-savvy, they will make use of a dashboard we offer, which will return to them in a visual format. Okay, here's your customers, here are the insights you wanted about them. And there you go. So different levels of sophistications, different ways of integrating to their business flow. And with regards to this, the market tends to be very efficient in filling these gaps also, because you see more and more small startups that pop up everywhere and that will offer specialized solution for very, very specific things like this. So creating or like setting up an API integration for your company to ingest whatever type of data. Like these consulting developer companies exist now. So yeah, it will vary from one organization to the other, but the market is efficient. It will figure it out, I think.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that we respond to any inquiries that are coming in online. So here's one for you, Dominic. Does Flinks, and I think you may have touched upon it, but I just want to ask it verbatim to ensure that we've addressed it. Does Flinks currently have direct connections with Canadian FIs to verify data?
So by direct connection, I would assume this person means API connection. We're in the conversation of having them, but we do have agreements of other nature to obtain the data from banks.